My name is Elizabeth Harper. I am 49 years old, and for a very long time, I believed I had done everything right. I married the man I loved. I raised a good son. I worked an honest job that paid the bills and left me enough energy to cook Sunday dinners and iron shirts late at night. I thought that if you gave your life stability, it would repay you in kind. It was Richard's 50th birthday, the sort of landmark people mark with speeches and photo boards and stories that begin with "Remember when." We booked a private room at a warm, brick walled restaurant downtown, the kind with soft lighting and a piano that never plays too loudly. Friends we'd known for decades came. My colleagues from the school came. His team from the office came, including a handful of new faces whose names I didn't quite know yet. My son, Daniel, sat beside me, tall now, 22. No longer the boy who clutched my hand crossing streets. There were two cakes, one lemon, and one chocolate, because Richard could never decide. There were toasts about his generosity, his sense of humor, his big plans for the next 50 years. I had prepared one too. In my purse was a note card with 4 bullet points. Small moments I wanted to remember out loud. The time he learned to make omelets during my morning sickness, how he painted Daniel's room blue on a Saturday and then green on a Sunday because the first shade wasn't right, how he danced in our kitchen when the radio landed on the right song. I thought those were the kinds of memories we were honoring. When the room settled and the piano paused, Richard rose. He tapped his spoon against the rim of his glass, and people turned, smiling, expectant. I felt the pleasant flutter that comes when everyone looks toward the person you love. He cleared his throat, held his glass steady, and said in that familiar baritone of his, "Thank you all for coming. Tonight, I have 2 reasons to celebrate: my 50th birthday and the beginning of a new life with the woman I truly love." The room did not gasp. It stalled. The sound of silverware stopped mid-air. The piano player's hands hovered above the keys and then fell to his lap. I felt the blood in my face recede like a tide. And then I saw her stand. Sarah. She worked in his division. I had met her before in passing. Polite, quick smile, hair tucked behind one ear as if she had just turned to listen. She stood now with a careful smile, a crownless queen, and the world rearranged itself with a quiet click. Daniel turned white. A fork slipped from someone's fingers and clattered in the silence. I remember the smell of lemon icing and the way the votive candles caught tiny sparks along the glassware. I remember my own voice surprising me, steady, not small, saying, "Congratulations, Richard. You finally told the truth." Some people later said they admired that line. Some said it was cold. I can tell you the truth. I had been practicing calm for months. It began with small things, receipts from places we never went, charges to a hotel 10 miles from our house. "Client dinner," he would say, dropping his keys on the entryway table, brushing my cheek with a kiss that landed like a promise written in pencil. He worked late more often. He carried his phone the way you carry a secret, face down, glued to his palm. He used to call me from the car and tell me about a song on the radio or the color of the evening sky. Lately, the drives were silent. The dinners were quieter. He spoke about fatigue the way people speak about weather: weary, vague, inevitable. I teach high school English. I live inside other people's words. Patterns are my trade. I noticed the cadence of his text previews, the same name appearing at odd times, the ellipses, the bubbles that vanished when I walked into the room. I did not confront him. I watched. I opened our bank's website at midnight and scrolled through line items until the numbers blurred. There were transfers, not large enough to shout, but steady enough to sing. A new account masked with asterisks. 2 pairs of theater tickets when we only attended one performance. A necklace he never gave me. The night the phone was left unlocked was not cinematic. He was in the shower. A message flashed. My hand moved. What I read did not devastate me the way movies promise. It clarified me. I can't wait until you're free of her. The cottage we looked at today is perfect. After the birthday, we'll tell everyone. She sent him a photo of a porch in the late afternoon, light slanting over railings. He wrote back, "Can't wait for our life." I closed the phone and set it exactly where it had been and stared at my hands, which did not shake. Long before Richard and I married, my parents left me a small bungalow near the river. When we got engaged, my father, who believed love was a vow and money was a contract, insisted on a prenuptial agreement. I remember sitting at our kitchen table in that bungalow, the papers spread between us, my father's reading glasses perched on his head, Richard waving his hand. "Of course," he'd said, "it's only fair." He signed. He did not read closely. I did. The fidelity clause was one paragraph, not even a full page. In the event of proven infidelity, contested shared assets would revert to the uninvolved spouse. I tucked the signed document in a fireproof box and hoped never to see it again. After the unlocked phone, I hired an attorney named Claire who wore tidy suits and listened more than she spoke. I learned the pace of legal caution. I printed statements and highlighted dates. I logged every transfer. I forwarded emails he had sent to Sarah from his work account that found their way to the home computer when he forgot to sign out. I kept a notebook in my nightstand drawer and wrote down everything, not because I feared forgetting, but because writing turns chaos into sequence, and sequence is how you survive. I also made dinner. I graded essays. I watered the fern by the kitchen window. I waited for the day he would choose to humiliate me publicly, and I decided that day would not end with me broken. At the restaurant, after my line, after the room restarted itself with coughs and murmurs, after the pianist found a key and tried to cover the hole in the evening with melody, I slipped a cream envelope from my purse and placed it beside Richard's plate. The envelope held photographs of transfers, a dry summary of Georgia, case law on one-party consent recordings, a copy of the prenup, and a petition for divorce, already filed that afternoon. I did not watch him open it. I kissed my son's temple. "You are not responsible for your father's choices," I whispered. "You are responsible only for your own." Then I stood and told our guests to please enjoy their meal. "I wish you all a lovely evening," I said. "The chocolate cake is very good." Outside, the early summer air was a warm hand on my face. The bricks of the sidewalk held the day's heat. I could breathe. The restaurant door banged behind me once, and then again. "Elizabeth!" Richard's voice, thinned by panic, tried for authority and cracked. "What did you do?" I did not turn. For the first time in years, my spine felt like it belonged to me. At home, the front hall smelled like lemon cleaner and dust. On the top shelf of the closet, behind the box of holiday lights, 2 suitcases waited, neatly packed with the shirts I had ironed. He had folded his future and stashed it where he thought I would not look. I smiled at the precision and the carelessness. That was Richard. meticulous with appearances, reckless with meaning. I moved through the rooms that night and said goodbye to them the way you say goodbye to the version of yourself who lived there. The dent in the couch cushion where Daniel used to read. The shallow gouge in the dining table where a science fair volcano overflowed. The white mark on the doorframe that is and will forever be age 9. I slept at my sister Nora's house, in a guest room with a quilt that smelled like lavender, my phone on the nightstand buzzing every 15 minutes. I answered only Daniel. "I'm okay," I wrote. "I promise." Richard arrived the next afternoon like a storm that missed its cue. "You served me on my birthday," he said, as if the calendar itself were an injury. He paced our living room, the envelope in his fist, the papers inside crushed and creased. "You've humiliated me." "You humiliated yourself," I said. I was at the dining table with my laptop open, email from Claire on the screen. "You made a choice in front of 50 people. I made one in front of a clerk." He tried on indignation, then righteousness, then romance in quick succession. "I love Sarah," he said, landing finally on the word as if it would absolve him. "I haven't felt alive in years. With her, I—" "You bought a necklace," I said. "You toured a cottage. You opened an account in your name only and moved money into it every Friday morning. Love is a different thing than logistics." He jabbed a finger at me. "You can't take the house. The prenup is valid," I said. "I've read it more times than you have. So has a judge." His mouth opened and closed. "It's cruel," he said at last, softer, trying a new door. "Elizabeth, we have history." "We do," I said. "That's what makes this so sad." It was the truth. I thought of the ridiculous satin tie he wore at our wedding because his sister insisted, and I laughed every time I saw the photos. I thought of the Thanksgiving we forgot to thaw the turkey and ate potatoes and pie and grapes on the floor. History is a rope you think will pull you back to safety. Sometimes it's just a line that shows you how far you've drifted. He sank into the corner of the couch and put his face in his hands. His phone vibrated on the coffee table. "Sarah, Sarah." Unread messages stacking on top of one another. He didn't pick up. I didn't look away. Eventually, he stood. "This isn't over," he said. "I'll fight." "Then we will both be in rooms with wood paneling and terrible lighting," I said, "and we will both tell the truth." Word does what it always does in towns like ours. Travels on feet and in teacups, and in the pauses between "how are you" and "fine." The story people told about us changed shape. First, he was a man in love. Then, he was a man who had made a mistake. Then, as facts replaced gossip, he was a man who had dismantled his own house and found the wind chill outside sharper than he expected. Some friends called to say they were sorry. Some called to ask for details and then pretended they were concerned. A few stopped calling. That was fine. Rooms empty themselves when you open the right window. The hearing was a week later. Claire met me on the courthouse steps with a yellow folder and a thermos of tea. We sat in a room that smelled like old books and carpet glue while a judge with intelligent eyes read our paperwork. Richard had hired an attorney who specialized in mergers and wore a tie so bright it hurt. He spoke about equity and long marriages and human error. Claire spoke about documents and dates and the paragraph my father once insisted on when the world was kinder, and I was too young to imagine this table. The judge kept her face calm, but when she ruled, her voice carried a firm music. "The agreement stands. The house remains. The shared investments, less what he had already siphoned, are mine to manage pending final division. His personal account remains accessible to him because even consequences have to feed themselves. Sarah did not sit beside him that day. She waited in the hallway, and when Richard emerged, there was a brief scene I watched through glass. Her hand on his arm, his mouth pinched, her expression sliding toward calculation. Love that is built on a lie loses its foundation quickly when the ground beneath it becomes less comfortable. Within 3 weeks, Sarah moved out of the townhouse Richard had secured for a little while and into the apartment of a real estate agent with a smile like a billboard. I learned this because towns talk and because I had stopped trying to stop them. Daniel came home the next weekend and stood in the doorway of the bookstore that did not yet exist. The lease wasn't signed. The shelves were still maps in my head. "Do you think it'll work?" he asked. "I think it will make me happy to try," I said. He helped me pack Richard's remaining things into boxes, labeled with a hand I recognized from old birthday cards, shirts, golf clubs, a box of beach stones we collected on a vacation to a northern shore, where the water was too cold and the sky was a magnificent mean blue. I kept the stones. They were mine too. I signed the lease on a narrow storefront with creaky floors and a tin ceiling. The previous tenant had been a travel agency that sold postcards of places people wanted to go before phones replaced postcards with photos that vanish into feeds. I painted the walls a color called winter wheat because the clerk at the paint store said it was warm without being loud. A retired carpenter named Manny built me a front counter that looked like it had always been there. I stood on a ladder and shelved poetry on a Tuesday afternoon while rain tapped the window. A woman came in with an umbrella and asked if I had anything by Mary Oliver. I led her to a thin spine and she held it like a small loaf of bread. Careful, grateful. When she left, I cried for 7 minutes. Not because I was sad, but because relief has to leave somehow and tears are a door. Richard called sometimes at odd hours when memory is louder than pride. He left voicemails that began with Liz and ended with "I'm sorry." I listened to a few. I deleted most. I do not pretend. There were mornings I reached for my phone, hoping for one that would say something I could forgive. But the past does not write new endings because you ask it kindly. There was one afternoon, months after the hearing, and 2 weeks before the final decree, when he came by the store. He looked older in the light. That surprised me more than it should have. We stood between mystery and memoir. He asked about Daniel. I asked about his mother's hip. There are conversations you have because you once loved someone, and conversations you don't have because you are learning to love yourself more. He asked if we could ever be friends. I said someday, maybe. If the word meant the kind where you keep your distance and wish each other well without twisting the wish into a plan. He nodded. He did not buy a book. In the end, the court affirmed what had been true since I closed his unlocked phone. Our marriage ended because he ended it first. The house remained mine. The accounts, divided by math and consequence, settled into numbers that let me sleep at night. The prenup, that one paragraph my father pressed into my hand when I still believed paper couldn't save you from pain, did exactly what it was designed to do. It rendered a betrayal expensive. I thought I would feel victorious. I felt something quieter, returned, as if the person I had been before compromise and appointments was waiting just behind a door I had been afraid to open. At the store, I hosted a reading on a Thursday. Local poets, folding chairs, a plate of cookies, the sound of people who want to be moved, making room for their own breath. A little girl in a yellow sweater pressed her face to the window and came in to sit on the floor while her father listened. When it was over, she stood and told me that books smell like rain. They do, I said. They do. On Sundays, Daniel comes by with groceries he insists I need. We cook enough soup to call it a plan. We talk about his job and the person he is trying to become. Sometimes, when the light is right, he looks so much like the boy with the backpack that I have to look away for a second. He forgives his father in pieces, which is the only honest way to do it. He forgave me for not seeing sooner. Forgiveness, I have learned, is not a gift you give the other person. It's a key you use on your own handcuffs. People ask if I'm lonely. I tell them the truth. I am alone sometimes, and then sometimes I am not. And both states are better than sitting at a table with someone who is somewhere else while pretending to be home. I learned to eat dinner with a book open and no apology. I learned the shape of my house at night when it is mine only. I learned that silence can be a friend if you stop treating it like a threat. One night after closing, I swept the floor and locked the register and stood with my palm on the cool of the front door's glass. The street outside was empty except for a couple walking their dog, the leash a soft line between them. The air smelled like rain and something sweet from the bakery next door. My reflection in the window surprised me again. Still me, but different, like a photo developed a beat longer. I thought of the restaurant and the envelope and the way my voice did not tremble. I thought of the rope of history and the way I had learned to let it fall instead of wrap it around my own ankles. If you are listening to this because you are where I was, standing at the edge of a revelation you did not ask for, hear me. Betrayal is not the end of your story. It is the end of a chapter you were taught to reread even when it stopped making sense. Turn the page. You will not know how the next one goes until you write it. You will be clumsy at first. You will use the wrong words. Then, one afternoon, you will find yourself laughing in your kitchen because the coffee tastes like morning again. Richard's life went on its own way. There were rumors of a move, a new job, smaller rooms. He is not my villain anymore. He is someone I loved who handed me a map out of a place that had started to feel like a loop. Sarah exists somewhere beyond my concern. Once, I saw her at the farmer's market, comparing tomatoes with a man in a baseball cap. She looked happy, or at least occupied. I kept walking. The peaches were good that year. I do not measure my days by what I lost. I measure them by small, specific mercies. The first customer to walk through the door each morning. The way the bell above the frame rings like a kind of yes. The stack of returns that means people have finished something and are ready for something else. The quiet after the last lamp is switched off. I measure them by the freedom of no longer auditioning for the part of a woman whose husband might still love her. Sometimes, I take one of the beach stones from the glass bowl and carry it in my pocket. It is smooth from the sea and from my thumb. It reminds me that the water that wears things down is the same water that makes them beautiful. It reminds me that the force which erodes can also refine. It reminds me that being changed is not the same as being ruined. My name is Elizabeth Harper. I am 49 years old. My husband announced a new life at his 50th birthday. And what he did not understand is that he gave me mine. This is not a story about how a marriage ended. This is a story about how a woman began again, slowly, deliberately, with a key she did not know she had been carrying all along. Because sometimes, when someone betrays you, they don't destroy your life. They cut the ropes that kept you docked to a harbor that no longer felt like home. And out beyond the breakwater, where the water looks like risk, there is a line on the horizon that is only another name for freedom.